Thank you for joining SIAM in Action. This is episode 6. In today's episode, The Modern Operating Model of SIAM, we will explore how service integration and management drives efficiency, innovation, and strategic success for modern enterprises. Launching SIAM in a complex modern enterprise is like launching a multi planet space mission today. It's not just about sending one rocket at a time, it's about dozens of interconnected modules, each built by different international agencies. And with AI driving navigation systems, the mission's success is indeed not just about sending and placing them in the right orbit, but it depends on how competent they are working together perfectly. So it's not just about ensuring each system is up, it's about orchestrating a continuous flow of mission critical values across countless specialized internal systems and external contractors. So, what does this truly mean when I say modern operating model of service integration and management? The good news is that it's just not me who is going to answer these critical questions. I have a great list of panel today who would be helping us to answer these questions. First, we have Claire. You may know Claire Agutter as the founder of Scopism, the home of SIAM's best practice and the heart of SIAM community. With more than 2 decades of experience in the service integration world, in 2016, she recruited and led the team of volunteers that created SIAM Foundation and professional body of knowledge, starting a journey that led to the creation of the online SIAM community. And today's webinar is all being sponsored and successfully driven by them.
Thanks so much for having me, Neha. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're most welcome. Next, we have Lakshmi Priya. She is leader of service integration and management in Kyndryl, and she also leads service management. She drives the strategic offering and success of delivery, including integration with GenAI for ITSM. Welcome to the show, Lakshmi.
Thank you, Neha. I'm thrilled to join this SIAM squad. Really looking forward to our conversation today. Thank you.
Great to have you. Next, we have Joanne Todd. She is Chief Information Officer at St. John's Ambulance. With a long-standing track record in designing and implementing SIAM operating model across complex service environments, Joanne brings a wealth of hands-on experience in driving transformation through multi-vendor integration and service excellence. Great to have you, Joanne.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be part of the panel today.
And completing our panel is Ben Palmer-Hughes. He is head of SIAM at St. John's Ambulance. Fantastic to have you here, Ben.
Hey, Neha, really pleased to be here. Excited.
Great. So I am excited to have you all. And talking about excitement, why don't we get started? Claire, what is the most exciting aspect for you of a modern SIAM's operating model, and how is it different?
I think that the biggest thing for me is success, which sounds like a strange thing to say about SIAM, but we all know that the stat that 70% of digital transformations have failed. But with the rise of AI as well and the increasing challenges of adopting emerging technologies, we're seeing these mistakes being repeated. So some recent research from Gartner and CIO.com showed that 30% of CIOs cannot say if their AI proof of concepts have been successful. 50% of organizations started out in 2023 developing their own AI systems, and that's fallen to 20%. They're now procuring them externally. So all of this focus we've had on transformation, on big bang change, hasn't delivered what organizations are ultimately looking for. And the difference with a modern operating model based on SIAM is change is business as usual. It's resilient, it's flexible, it's scalable. If technology changes, we can bring in service providers, we can work with massive organizations, small organizations, and all of that can adapt as the business needs evolve. So that's the most exciting thing for me, is the fact that adopting new technologies, adapting the business isn't this painful change that we have to go through anymore. It's just something that we can cope with as business as usual. And the more we do it, the more and more successful we get.
Brilliant. So adopting for the success of business, that's a brilliant mantra to go after. Joanne, may I request your perspective on this topic?
Following on from what Claire's saying, I agree with a lot of that. But I think the big thing for me is moving into being more strategic and more proactive than being reactive. So actually embedding the whole culture into the whole organization, not just into the IT function. So making it kind of just a way of people working. And as a CIO, that's kind of a real big thing for me, is to get the people to work alongside the systems, the processes, the technology, to make sure that it moves that forward. And I think this is our opportunity to make it the norm. So it isn't something that the IT department does. It's not just seen as a help desk chasing SLAs. It's about actually, this is the culture of what we put in there across the whole organization. And it can even take on the enterprise when we get, really excited about it and move it out there. So that's the big thing for me, is I'm really looking forward to being able to make it the norm.
Brilliant. So while it's also talking about that we need to focus on business outcome, it's also about bringing the entire organization in together. Great. Ben, what would you identify as the indispensable pillars of this modern operating model?
I think Joanne's already started with it, really talking about culture, and cultural alignment's absolutely critical when it comes to service integration. And if you think of SIAM as not just a framework, but a mindset, you really need to have shared values and collaboration across internal teams and external teams to make it work. We don't do IT for IT. We do it to enable outcomes and to deliver value. So if we're not aligning to that cultural aspect, and really, I guess, what it is that our organizations or our customers do, then we're not going to be successful. So cultural alignment absolutely is a core and key pillar of what we do. And I think moving on from culture, dynamic service is absolutely critical as well in a technology landscape that's moving and evolving so quickly.
Yeah.
We need to be dynamic and able to support our teams to be able to react and to be able to move with that evolving landscape as well. Otherwise, again, we're not going to be successful.
Amazing. I like the way you're thinking on how all of this needs to be supported. Lakshmi, what would you bet on as the most indispensable pillars for modern operating model?
Interesting question, Neha. So picture a well-balanced breakfast, right? You need a bit of everything in it: proteins, carbs, fiber, and all of that, right? Similarly, we need a bit of all the pillars here as well to construct a meaningful operating model, isn't it? We need governance, process, alignment with the business, tools, and culture, right? That's the secret sauce that we need, what Ben and Joanne has been talking about. So that's how I see the pillars of operating model, right? Now, you can't play favorites with these pillars. As tempting as it is for us to lavish all our attention on governance, after all, who doesn't love a good meeting, right? But the truth is, without the right stakeholders, a clear process, and the right tools that can enable observability across the ecosystem, your governance forum is just a group chat with extra paperwork. Right. So all these pillars need to work together, and it's essential to recognize that the maturity of these each pillar can actually vary. Right. It's a bit like a group of bandmates, right? Some are ready to go for their solo while others are still tuning their instruments. It really comes down to keeping things holistic and flexible. So if you want to boost the maturity of one of the pillars, right, start
Yeah.
by zeroing in on the areas that could use some improvement. Maybe it's refining the processes. Maybe to start with, you might want to develop the roles and responsibilities, or fine tuning the governance, or if the organization is more data driven, right? It could be building those integrated dashboards and insights into everything that SIAM does, right? But every journey is different. But these are some common steps that we could take to give it a jump start.
Brilliant point. So now, considering all these aspects that we are discussing, how do you see this operating model would enable organizations to be ready to be more adaptable, to be future-proof? And this is an open question for all the guests. Anybody who wants to answer this? Lakshmi, you want to take it?
Yep. Yeah. So, one thing that's really worth highlighting is that in a big ecosystem, right, we might actually find several operating models working side by side, right? Think about adoption of a new business strategy, such as, I don't know, expansion initiatives or digital transformation. All of this mean you will need different operating models, but all under one roof. So SIAM is that glue that holds these models together, helping you move quickly and adjust contracts. So service providers can also, kind of ramp up or scale back when needed. So the flexibility forms the foundation of the modern SIAM ecosystem.
Amazing. Being the glue while giving the flexibility. Claire, what are your thoughts?
To build really on what Lakshmi said, and Joanne mentioned the enterprise earlier on, we're all very used to hearing people say change is the only constant, but I don't think business thinking has ever really adapted to deal with that. So there's always this focus on establishing the organizational structure, the organizational model, and then refining it. But then we look at the world we're living in today, something happens. It could be a climate emergency, it could be a war, it could be an economic development, it could be a pandemic, and businesses are scrambling to adapt. So to have this level of adaptability is absolutely crucial, and it makes those organizations future proof, and any external drivers that affect them can be easily absorbed. So an example here is I'll bring in an example of a South African manufacturing organization that we did some work with. They had very specific governmental targets about the amount of spend that they did with small local organizations as well as the large multinationals for their IT services. So they had contracts with absolutely enormous organizations, Microsoft, Amazon, but then they had the contracts with the very small 3-person organization just down the road that was providing elements of their service. But because they built this SIAM operating model, they could very quickly adapt to that. They had ways to onboard and offboard the small suppliers, and they could meet those governmental targets. So that's the future-proofing thing to me, is not thinking of change as being something terrifying, just thinking of, well, what do we need to do this week? And knowing that the operating model can flex to deal with that.
Right. So the key point here is ensuring that the operating model is open to and easy to bring in changes and make it more adoptable across the organization. Ben, do you have any experience or comment to share on this one?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting on this point for me is that almost all organizations are probably doing some element of integration, whether they realize it or not. And I think gone are the days when you would outsource everything you do to one huge supplier and they'll do everything for you. Like that just doesn't really happen so much anymore. So almost all organizations have complex supply chain, whether it's a handful of medium-sized suppliers or loads of tiny suppliers. Everyone's integrating that. They may not know they're doing it, and they may not be doing it particularly well, but that's why SIAM, I think, can really add so much value
Mhm.
because it is useful to everybody, even if it's a concept that's quite new to a lot of organizations. The amount of
Yeah.
teams I've spoke to where they don't really know what SIAM is, but I'll guarantee that they're doing some form of integration. So I think getting that message out is really important because I think a lot of organizations can really stand to benefit from understanding integration a little bit more.
Yeah, all the responses make me smile all the more, but it all goes back to where you started with, Claire. You said that around 70% of the organizations still face challenges when they're trying to transform. 70% of those projects continue to fail, but still, our business models are evolving, and not just because there is a specific reason financially, but also technology wise, whether it is adopting any of these technologies that we talk about today, which probably would be obsolete in 10 days, whether it's agentic AI, whether it is intelligent automation systems, IoT, quantum security, or any sophisticated data analytics tools that we talk about. It's no more just about supporting those for IT, but fundamentally bringing them in to transform the business. How would this transform our modern science operating model? Lakshmi, I would like to go to you first and get your views.
A brilliant question, Neha. So agentic AI is a real game changer, I think, right? So can you picture
Mhm.
smart agents that handle service workflows on their own, right? Sort out issues without needing help and keep making things run better across all the service providers in the ecosystem. Now that's SIAM, moving from simple coordination to true intelligent orchestration. Right. So the tools and technology pillar of the operating model should consider this during the design phase, right? And actively look for service providers who can bring in these services into the ecosystem.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think another critical technology advancement is what we do with that advanced analytics, right?
Yeah.
So it's no longer about just tracking the operational metrics. We're talking about predictive insights, right, that help us stay ahead of issues, personalized service experiences for every business unit, and continuous improvements, right, that's driven by real data across the whole ecosystem. So these technologies naturally elevate the ecosystem and allows our customers, our businesses to spend less time in resolving operational issues, but giving them more time to focus on core business strategies. So that's how I
Interesting.
see
Yeah.
all these technologies as a great game changer, something that absolutely enables the SIAM operating model.
Brilliant. And Ben, do you see these technologies making SIAM more powerful?
I think it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but I think th these technologies make our organizations more powerful. I think it's for me, it's less focused on SIAM, and I think in some ways that's the way SIAM should be, with less focus on SIAM, more focus on our business and our organizations. So all of these rapidly evolving technologies are things that we need to be ready to adapt to and support our organizations with. I think in the kind of train of thought where we can't be left behind or our organizations can't be left behind. Like we need to be ready because technology is going to move whether we're ready for it or not. So now I
Yeah.
think quantum security is such a great example of that because it in a lot of ways it's a really complicated area, but boiled down to simple concepts. Technology is growing so fast where current modern encryption is so much less effective in a kind of world of quantum computing. So
Yeah.
it's a really simple way of showing how technology is moving, whether we're ready for it or not. So we need to build to enable our business and organizations to deal with that. And again, with that kind of integration angle, we've got all of this stuff happening all at the same time. We don't get to pick and choose which bits we're ready for and which bits we're not either. So we need to gel all of that together. And yeah, we have to be prepared for that, I think.
That's a brilliant point. It's not just about SIAM, it's about the entire organization. So, Joanne, in your role of a CIO, integrating these diverse tech stacks across multiple vendors, and most of the organizations would have multiple tech stacks. It's not all modern, not all traditional, some way in between. How do you see them becoming the biggest challenges or advantages in integrating these technology together? What would be the key hurdle that you would face when you have to bring in a SIAM operating model?
I think for me, it's about getting that seamless transition between the different parts of the estate. So recognizing, and particularly in the world of not-for-profit, I have a lot of legacy and I have a lot of home-built activity, but then
Yeah.
I'm really excited about putting an AI bot behind it, but that AI company might only have 2 people working in it, and I've got this huge organization for my legacy estate. So how do I build a SIAM with that equity rather than equality? So how do we make sure that we build a seamless layer that allows different levels of support to go across those different technologies, and not really caring whether it's brand new technology or whether it's old and legacy and creaking at the seams? It's about how do we give our business that overall support. But it's not just the business, we've also got to support the suppliers, because some of them will have huge infrastructure behind of them and some of them will have nothing. But I can't discount them, because actually some of those smaller suppliers in my world in not-for-profit will give me the best value for money, because I can get a lot more out of them, because we work with a mutually beneficial system. So the thing for me is, how do we keep that ship sailing really smoothly with all of those people moving between those different towers and back, but without really our business recognizing that that's what we're doing. So they just feel as though their service is being supported as they move forward.
Makes sense. Absolutely. Claire, what do you think about it?
I think one of the biggest challenges that I see is understanding the context around the technology from a business perspective. And I think if I kind of quote here from Jurassic Park, which everybody knows is an IT film with some dinosaurs in it, they talk about the fact that we spend so long thinking about whether we could do something, we don't think about whether we should do something. And there's a lot of organizations at the moment very excited. We want to have AI from start to finish. We want to integrate all of these things, but we need to think about the long-term implications of that as well. So if we take, for example, healthcare, working with some government healthcare bodies at the moment who are rightly very, very excited about the analytics possibilities, working with some very specialized organizations who can take health data and produce astonishing insights from that data. But they also need to be very cognizant of the fact that people are scared, worried about their data being shared. How do we make sure that people aren't recognizable from the data that's being shared with these organizations? So we need to think about the technical integrations, and there are specific things that SIAM would get involved with there, things like SIAM aware contracting, things like understanding the different tiers of service providers. So like Joanne said, to what level will they be integrated into the SIAM model? But I think it's always helpful to take a step back and think, why are we doing this? What guardrails do we need to put around the technology? And then that makes the integration picture much, much clearer.
Makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. We need to think through on what are we doing and why are we doing that, and then accordingly bring in the guardrails, ensure the contracts are aligned, and then the process, procedures, technology all aligned to that. Now, talking about this, Lakshmi, would you mind just taking an example, probably from the work that you have been doing so far, and try to explain it with the help of a customer story on how these technologies can help us to bring a genuine value to a customer's business?
Yeah, sure, Neha. So, what are businesses looking for today, right? They're looking for high quality delivery experience to their customers while
Yeah.
maintaining operational excellence. That's simply what every business wants to achieve, right? Irrespective of the specific field they are in. So to really make this work, right, the SIAM operating model needs to help these businesses use these advanced technology in a way that it makes sense to them, or the way it makes a difference to them, right? So in a real world scenario, right, a retail business aiming to expand its services into new markets with sharp focus on customer experience. Now, to achieve this, they decided to launch a mobile application, which not only helped them reduce in-store traffic, but also allowed them to kind of increase the customer base that they have. So managing fluctuating demand was essential in this case.
Okay.
So they needed service providers who could or who offered the ability to scale the service capacity up and down as needed. Now, this meant, getting your application providers, your cloud teams, the service desk, all of them to work together as one entity, right? With very strong focus on SIAM operations, SIAM operating model, and all of that. But beyond this, the SIAM function also had to act like a partner, because to make sure, they are involved right from the design phase of such a service launch, and then continue to go on to support in the day-to-day operations. So particularly for this case, right, several initiatives were implemented. So
Okay.
one, we had to look at proactive service monitoring to detect and resolve issues before they are even noticed by the customers. Automated service mapping, right, was done. For example, right from the shopping cart services, what are the downstream applications, and then what are the infrastructure that's linked to it. The entire mapping of services was critical so that
Yeah.
SIAM function and the business at any point in time has the right visibility to make the decisions. And of course, advanced analytics also helped in kind of forecasting the service demands. But what
Brilliant.
really was
Yeah.
important here was incorporating the way, these technologies were incorporated into the service provider contract, right? And we also had to include clauses that allowed scaling based on the actual capacity needs, of course, bring in XLAs. So in a nutshell, right, the operating model kind of enabled the providers just not to deliver according to what they have as performance standards or what we call as SLAs, but also have the perspective of customer experience. How does it impact the business and the customer? So that aspect was brought in as well. So this is something that has really helped.
Well, thank you. That's really helpful to understand how this actually flows in an organization when you bring in SIAM to glue this entire value chain together. Now, talking about value chain, I think technology is one part of it, but then we also have people and culture, which is just as vital as technology. Joanne, when you try to bring in or evolve the operating model of SIAM, does it impact roles, skills, overall organization culture? And within this integration layer, how do you see we need to evolve altogether, not just from a technology perspective, but also from a people and culture perspective?
So I think you've got to look at it from two sides. So
Yeah.
the first one is, as Ben said, in most organizations, you have people doing SIAM functions. They don't always know they're called that. They don't always appreciate how they link together or how the power of them linking together makes it better. And I think the first thing is to do that explanation and put that in place and give the structure around those people, allowing them to grow and also see it works elsewhere. So taking Lakshmi's example there, I work in a not-for-profit charity area, but I could just as easily learn from a retail perspective as I could from another not-for-profit, and actually challenging sometimes outside of your norm is the best thing to do for your team in that SIAM. I think the other thing you've got to look at is actually it's not just, a CIO SIAM, it is the whole organization's activity. But using the term SIAM sometimes makes them think of a service desk and a help desk, and that's all I do is I just ring up and raise my ticket and everything else will be rosy. But if you put it in terminology to your exec and your board, this is about keeping us safe. This is about keeping us honest. This is about making sure that we're making the best use of the value for money of the organization. We are ensuring that we are not building 5 different things that all do the same thing. So it's that way of looking at it and turning on its head and turning it into a cultural thing as well. So if I look inside our own organization, we've built and are still building a very good and solid internal SIAM function. But actually, we've also got colleagues from our HR department asking us to look at workflows for them, which really is an enterprise SIAM. So how can we control their workload? Because it's another ticketing system if you take it to its higher level. So it's about actually how do you give that multi-lens to it and keep all of that really cool governance and structure, just use different naming technologies and lenses on it.
That's a very interesting tip, right? You do not really need to call SIAM a SIAM to bring in the change, in terms of not the operating model, also the people and culture to come along. Help them look at the objective rather than just looking at the change. Thank you so much for bringing in that point. And my head, for some reason, is going back to what you mentioned earlier, Claire, about Jurassic Park. And I was having a conversation with one of the professors a few weeks back, and he showed 2 images, one of a dinosaur, the one of a cockroach. And he said, "Who do you want to be?" Many would want it to go become a dinosaur, but what he really meant is to become a cockroach and be adaptable. Bring in change that you want to survive it in the future as well, along with you. So while thinking of that, Ben, I would like to come back to you and quickly ask if you had faced any practical challenges and issues in bringing these changes. And would you mind sharing some of the lessons learned or success from the stories that you have been part of?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to sound a bit like a broken record here, talking about culture again, but I think
Uh-huh.
cultural resistance is one of the really big challenges that I've seen and experienced as well. I think it's like a legacy thinking kind of issue for me, where we do things the way we do it because that's the way we've always done it. We start talking about SIAM and it's this new scary thing that isn't really well understood. But again, like as we touched on earlier, like there's elements of integration that we're already doing. Um, so St. John underwent a restructure in the last couple of years and tried to introduce the concept of SIAM or service integration. And it was met initially with a bit of resistance because it was something new. It was something that we didn't really get. How was it going to help us? How was it any different to what we were doing already? And I think part of the way we broke that down was getting the team to and the organization, I guess, why did the not immediate team to understand actually it isn't all that different to what we've been doing before. We're just trying to add a bit more structure to it and do it a bit more deliberately, I guess, rather than doing SIAM by accident, which we were kind of doing previously. So I think
Okay.
it's a clarity of vision type issue as well. But by really putting a stall out in terms of what it is we were trying to achieve and how we were going to do it and what the strategy was,
Mhm.
we could be more deliberate in what we were trying to achieve and trying to weave that into what the organization were trying to achieve as well, which again, I think this is where we started the conversation today,
Right.
that what the organization and the outcomes that they're trying to achieve, that's what's really important here, not doing IT for IT. So bringing it back to that and boiling it down to what is the vision here? What are we trying to achieve? Why are we doing it? Was super, super important. And I mean, some state in the obvious kind of learnings like incremental adoption. You're not going to do SIAM for everything all at the same time. Like, and it's a
Mhm.
bit of a grim cliche, but you're not going to eat an elephant all in one go. So we need to break it down and do it in chunks. Communication, proving
Right.
return on investment as well. Real state and the obvious stuff, but I think just getting started somewhere and being communicative about it as well is really important. I think, especially when we consider the complex,
Yeah.
multi-supply nature of what we're doing,
Yeah.
we need to be a team of teams that are all pulling in the same direction. So if we're not communicating it and not being clear about what that vision is, then you're going to struggle as well, I think.
Those are really critical points, right? Not just doing IT for IT, but bringing IT for business, understanding the vision, and doing SIAM by stealth, if I may say so. Uh, and in order to ensure that everybody, whether it's internal team or external team, are oriented towards the vision which business has for them. Now, talking about orienting the vision, Claire, if I may ask you, what is your vision, or what do you think the SIAM's operating model would look like in the year 2030?
That's a brilliant question, Neha. And one thing that shocked me when I was thinking about this was, in my head, 2030 is the far future. It's spaceships, it's flying cars. And of course, we've got 5 years to get ready for 2030. So I'm going to outline a little scenario here. I'm intrigued to see what the rest of the panel thinks about it. And then maybe we can loop back at the end as well and kind of pull out some of the sort of the key points that underpin this scenario. But this is my belief of what the SIAM model of 2030 will look like. And when we have our 2030 episode, which I'm sure we'll get in the diary soon, we can check back and see how right or wrong I was.
Absolutely.
So the key point for me is, I think in 2030, the environment that SIAM manages is going to be more complex than ever, hugely complicated, both technically, process, governance, global reach. It will be so complicated, but the value that SIAM delivers in that complexity is masking it from the organizations that are actually consuming the services. So here's my scenario. And it's based on smart road systems, and it's based on transport infrastructure. So think about a government agency in any country that you like applying a SIAM model across the road network. It's got Internet of Things sensors, it's got traffic monitoring, it's got predictive maintenance, it's got artificial intelligence, scheduling work, pulling on a platform of suppliers on flexible contracts. It's got driverless vehicles running around delivering freight. And it's working towards targets for being things like carbon neutral as well. So one day, the digital twin of this road system is consuming news feeds, and it realizes that a visiting dignitary is likely to result in some traffic, some road closures, and it starts to map the expected route that this dignitary is going to take. AI agents then cancel some scheduled road maintenance with service providers, and they spin up a smart contract with alternative suppliers to get some additional signage in place. And that's all paid automatically through this smart contract that's built on the blockchain. Freight's rerouted, and that's prioritized based on the time criticality of the deliveries. So if you've got a truck full of peaches, you're going to be there in front of the truck full of shoes. And ultimately, all of this is invisible to road users. The experience is as they expected, because all of this work has happened behind the scenes. The planned maintenance got rescheduled. The crew for that work that was cancelled got reallocated to some reactive work that was there that needed done elsewhere. So ultimately, zero human touch, AI enabled, blockchain enabled, astonishing experiences delivered through SIAM. And that's my scenario.
Amazing scenario. And that makes me think what you're sketching right now, Claire, is the smart operating model of service integration and management for Smart City of 2030.
Yes.
Brilliant. Before I say anything, Joanne, how would you imagine this functioning in 2030?
So I love everything you've said there, apart from the zero human. So, as you'd expect me to say. So whilst I get that it would be more automated, I don't think that we should ever look at a scenario that has no human interaction in there, because I think that all of this still needs people to ensure that the right smart contracts are in place and the right things are done. And there isn't a huge assumption made that, you know, shoes are more valuable than peaches, because quite frankly, even in my world, they are. But, you know, we have to be sure that there's that kind of leveling across and piece there. So I think the big thing for me is love all of that, but with a level of human interaction at the right place, giving it that overarching validation to ensure that everybody in that chain gets the right things happening. Now, that's not to say they're all on the phone and they're screaming at each other as they were, you know, I can remember 20 years ago where you'd be arguing the toss about clock stopping something just because you fancied having a little bit of a pause in your service day. So none of that, but please don't ever look at not having, you know, the right interaction with people, because people love people.
Amazing point. Yeah. So bringing the human in the loop is extremely important in this smart city ecosystem of the future as well. And while service integration being the key, whether it is for the connected cars or the road maintenance, or it's the agent who is managing and canceling the contract. Claire, I would like to hear from you again. How do you think this human in the loop would come in, and what are your thoughts on what Joanne just now said?
I think Joanne's absolutely right. And the key point to me is having human involvement at the correct level. If I think back 20 years ago to my first job in IT, when I worked on a help desk, I probably spent a good 5 hours of every shift resetting passwords. And the idea of that being a manual activity now is just laughable. And I think the same thinking applies at a much broader level in this kind of modern SIAM operating model. So, in fact, there is more community, not less. But collectively, the customers, the service providers, the service integrator are collaborating on innovation, on context, on the big picture, and where do we go from here. And if we can apply agentic AI, if we can apply smart contracts, marketplaces at the correct level, we remove a lot of the noise from people's day, and that allows us to use humans in a much more effective way, because they're not resetting passwords or arguing about stopping the clock on a ticket. They're doing the big thinking that they absolutely should be doing.
Brilliant. So overall, we are trying to elevate the entire ecosystem, including the people involved in it. Ben, can I bring in you on this topic, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I think I kind of sit on the fence a little bit here because I agree really strongly with Joanne and Claire. I think for me though, like where I'm kind of leaning towards Joanne slightly is the human outcome centric nature of what we're talking about here is really key. Like we've talked all throughout the session today about how what we don't do IT for IT. All of these systems are designed to enable outcomes and to support people ultimately. So by keeping that outcome-based thinking and why are we doing this? What's the so what of what we're doing here? Like that really is the key thing for me. And but again, I guess flip it around, that's where SIAM can be adding real value by gelling all of this together, but keeping the human-centric, outcome-based thinking at its heart. So we're really focusing on the why.
That's really important. That makes me think, Ben, is not everything would be free, even with this agentic or advanced digital models that we would have, right? So where do you really want to invest in? Because everything would not come for free. There would be certain fiscal constraints or cultural constraint or technology constraints, right? With all of that, what the point that you're bringing in is we need to bring human in the loop while ensuring that we are investing in the right place where we need to bring in technology versus where we need to keep human, right? And it's this very interesting topic. I would request all the audience who are listening in or viewing this podcast to please add in your comments as well on what are your take in how would this future 2030 operating model of service integration look like, especially working around all of these technology for the use case that Claire just now outlined of a smart city of future. So thank you so much to the panelists for joining us today. This has been an extremely insightful and engaging conversation so far. We have unpacked a lot of critical points today. While we are talking about the modern operating model, Claire, I'm sure in 2030 we will come back and see where we stand. Having said that, I just want to quickly go around the table and ask, how did you feel, all the panelists, how did you feel about today's discussion? Claire, can I start with you first, please?
Yeah, of course. I think there's been two kind of standout points to me. One is the human side that Joanne and Ben have made such a powerful case for, but the other is the fact that we can't ignore the technology. And Lakshmi shared some great examples of just how astonishing the outcomes can be when the technology is applied correctly. So it's finding that balance between exploiting the technology without losing the human touch. And that's a line I think that SIAM helps us to walk very effectively.
Thank you. Lakshmi?
A great insights today from everyone, right? I think for me personally, if there is one takeaway, is that the future of the service integration lies in genuine partnership, right, between technology and people. And success will depend on embracing SIAM just not as a coordinator, but as a strategic enabler, right? That's the elevation. So that's the change in perspective we will see in 2030. But the key, right, all of these changes is also going to necessitate a skills transformation. That is, SIAM personnel who focus on specific processes today should upskill, right? Should upskill to acquire techno-functional skills that would enable them to break down these silos or break down these business requirements into service needs and make it more, or kind of, develop this genuine partnership, right, between people and technology and what business needs. So that's the key. But I think fabulous points by everybody here.
Thank you. Joanne?
I think some great learning for me, and some loads of stuff that I'd love to kind of poke a bit more and have another conversation with people on the panel around. So just watch out because I'm on the hunt. But I think the big thing, it's all about partnership. It's all about balance, whether that be people and technology, whether that be your business and your supplier. So the whole concept of SIAM, full stop, is about gaining that balance, and that's the thing that I think we should never forget.
Brilliant. Thank you. Ben?
It's been a really great conversation. I always enjoy this kind of conversation because I think that not that many people nerd out about this kind of stuff as much as I do, and I definitely know Claire feels the same from a few chats we've had recently. But no, it's been really fun, and I think the key thing for me, and I guess the consideration that I'm taking away from this a lot is that we talked a lot about modernizing and the fact that it's really not optional, it's essential. We run this journey, whether we like it or not. Things are going to evolve, whether we're ready for them or not. So, yeah, preparation and being aware of that and receptive to it with that human-centric value at its core is the big takeaway for me and what excites me about this.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ben, for saying that this is essential. It's not optional. And you all have recapped the entire session so well that I have no work left to do now. Thank you so much for joining us. To all the audience, if you have more questions or topics that you would want to explore further, please reach out to the panelists either on the community or comment wherever you're watching us or listening us to. That would help us to definitely reach out to you, connect with you better, understand your questions and answer them better. But thank you so much, everybody, for joining in, especially to the audience for listening in as well. This marks the end of episode 6. We look forward to stay in touch with you through our SIAM community. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. Have a nice day.